That's what I'm talking about, talking about, talking about.
Hi, welcome to Talking About. I'm John Griffith.
And I'm JC Alvarez.
And we are very excited. We have a very special guest.
Very excited. We're so excited to have a returning member of our family here. Michael Alago, how are you?
Oh, pretty good.
You've got a documentary out on Netflix.
Absolutely.
And before we went on the air, I was very careful with John to make sure that I can say the
well, we could just say the F.
Yep. Well,
not say the F word.
Well, no, we have to say it at least in its
bragging rights. You got to say it once. So.
You know,
there you go.
Yeah. So go ahead. You have the honors of saying the documentary's title.
Well, it begins with "Who the fuck is that guy?" and what's the subtitle of it?
It's called "Who the Fuck Is That Guy? The Fabulous Journey of Michael Alago," and it's directed by Drew Stone.
So.
And if that doesn't get you to check out this documentary, which is wonderfully fascinating and
thank you.
And as I had mentioned to you before, really a major journey in your life. Talk about coming full circle in this journey. Where would we like to start? Because the documentary does encompass so much of Michael's own experience within New York City's music culture, which is phenomenal. I mean, you saw some of the most major bands in the whole punk era in the 70s and the 80s really rise, and you signed a lot of them, but this was a time in New York City that was just so full of energy and so full of life, and as a young person, you really were part of that whole movement.
In the thick of it.
Yeah. Tell us about
Well, you know, I started going out when I was about 15 years old. I guess that's 1976, and the city was filthy dirty. And I think when you're young, I never had fear. So I was always out there wanting to see shows. The Village Voice newspaper informed me into what was going on in the club scene, whether it was Max's Kansas City, CBGB, On the Rocks, Gildersleeves, A7. All these places were listed in the back of the Village Voice. And if it sounded interesting to me, I went to see it. So I got to see everyone from The Damned, The Dead Boys, Cherry Vanilla, Agnostic Front, my brain is just stopping. No, I just get so excited sometimes. Yeah. But I talk a lot about that in the documentary.
When we get to, the viewers get to actually experience a lot of it, because, I mean, that really was such an incredible time in New York City.
It was a vibrant time, and there were so many different types of artists that you could see and hear every night.
Yeah, it really was like almost like the Emerald City of when you look at it culturally. It was like a utopia of creativity. You describe it in the documentary as almost like being in a time that was extremely electric.
Well, it's very electric. You know, when you have a wide variety of artists coming to play in New York, it's just an exciting moment. And you know, I speak also about, in the early days, what informed my listening was living in Brooklyn. I listened to WABC AM radio, and I watched all of the music shows on TV, whether that was Don Kirshner's rock concert, Dick Clark's American Bandstand, Don Cornelius's Soul Train. So between radio and those music stations, none of them were heavily formatted back then. So you heard a wide variety of things, from Aretha Franklin to Rare Earth to Archie Bell and the Drells to Grand Funk Railroad. And that's the beauty of it all back then, is that things weren't heavily formatted the way radio is now, and everything to me just sounds so homogenized that I'd rather not listen.
Yeah, of course. I'm the one who doesn't turn off my phone.
Didn't turn off his phone, and what does it say? Shut up. Okay,
that's perfect. That's right. But also, that's kind of ironic, because a lot of the movement that you were experiencing was like the punk movement in music, because you do have a really solid music background. But all these bands that you were seeing were coming from across the pond, and they really had a unique sound and a really rougher sound. And,
absolutely.
They were just really
nothing was ever perfect, but it was about an attitude, and if you had great songs, I wanted to listen.
So it started there, and kind of like goes to the title of the documentary, because we all we grew up in New York City, and we all always saw the same faces come around, and you always wonder, well, who's that guy over there who's always with the band? And, well, that guy was you.
Well, Drew Stone, who is our director and fearless leader, would see me out every night. And that's exactly what he would say. And so about 4 years ago, he called me up and he said, you know, you've had such an interesting life, and let's have a talk. So we had a talk, and in the talk, he said he wanted to make a film. And I felt like he loved music as much as I loved music. He said all the right things. And then, of course, one's ego becomes involved. So, of course, I said yes. And, you know, I'm really quite pleased on how it all turned out.
Yeah, because it's funny that you mentioned ego, because the documentary really encapsulates just your passion for music.
You know, there's a very personal journey along with your professional journey, and that's what grabbed me, because the glimpses that you gave us of your life, just the elements that parallel. You know, there's something that can touch on everybody's life, and the elements that paralleled my own journey really hit me hard, and it's like, I got it.
Oh, good. Well, that's what was supposed to happen. And, you know, the beautiful thing about this all is once it got on Netflix September 1st, it was worldwide. And I got to hear from so many people around the world, and it all ranged from what they took away was, I love that you signed Metallica, to really other types of serious things. Like there was a kid in Colombia who said, I'm 21 years old, I'm gay, I'm HIV positive, and I could never, ever tell my family. And, you know, wow. Talk about not being free.
Yeah.
So, of course, I had to write back to him, and I said, well, I'm glad that you're 21, which probably means you can move out of the house soon, and you need to just be yourself and be as open and as free as you want to be, and take good care of yourself. And if it's that time for you to take medications, then do it. Because, you know, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. People talk about you if you're fat, you're skinny, you're tall, you're short. So please just be who you are, and you will be happy.
You know, that's wonderful advice, and how it really sort of like framed your career and who you are, because you lived unabashedly, and you were became this industry professional who was out and hanging out with these guys that you kind of often...
You were out before out was in.
I was out. Well, you know, what I always tell everyone, I don't think I've ever seen a closet in my life. And of course, everyone always talks about closets are for clothes. And I was just always this free spirit. I never felt like there was a reason to hide anything. So when Drew decided to make this movie, we said, well, if it's going to be about a life, we have to talk about it all.
Examine the whole thing.
The whole thing.
And unpack it.
Absolutely. So, you know, some of it was rough to talk about, whether it was HIV or drug and alcohol addiction. But the beauty of the whole thing is I'm sober and I lived. And here we are.
And you actually really influenced music.
Absolutely.
I mean, Metallica is, I mean, you know, in high school, Metallica was like the band.
Oh, well, you know, I heard...
For me in high school.
Right.
Me in high school,
Exactly.
Metallica was the band.
Well, you know, I signed them in summer of 1984. I started my job as an A&R executive in the beginning of 1983. I heard a little independent record that they made called Kill 'Em All, and I knew that they were doing something that was so different, that encapsulated classic rock, hard rock, speed, thrash, into all these things that made up Metallica. And nobody else was doing anything remotely that sounded like them. So I knew I had to have these people in my life. And so after they played a historic gig at the Roseland Ballroom on 52nd Street, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, it felt like I signed them the next day, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, I mean, you've had such an influence on music, especially.
Well, I think that signing changed the course of hard rock and heavy metal, and it also gave other record companies license to sign things that were like-minded. People were feeling more adventurous in their signings, and they weren't afraid to sign things that weren't traditional sounding. And that signing of Metallica gave everyone that freedom.
Yeah, and you really immersed yourself in the culture before you became an A&R guy for Elektra and for Geffen Records. You really kind of like walked yourself over to a venue in New York City, the Ritz, which became Webster Hall.
That's right.
Right, and you basically just told the owner, it's like, I want a job.
Yes. Well, you know, I started going out real early. Like I said, in 1976, I started to go see bands. We can fast forward to 1980. And yeah, I was working in a pharmacy on Astor Place. There is a building on East 11th Street that was called Casa Galicia. Many years prior to that, I think it was the Women's Garment Center Union. Anyway, so I saw a sign that said Video Dance Club opening, and I thought it sounded interesting enough where I went inside, and I was looking around, and if anyone has been to the Ritz or Webster Hall, it's a beautiful building that has Art Deco around the entire room. So there was a gentleman in the balcony, and it felt like the Wizard of Oz, and he said, "Kid, what are you doing here? We're not open." And I was like, "I want a job." And he just like looked at me, "Did you have a resume?" I said, "No, I do not have a resume." And he said, "Come upstairs." So the gentleman's name is Jerry Brandt. He is an awesome entrepreneur, and we just started talking about music.
Yeah.
Music from the Great American Songbook to contemporary hard rock, heavy metal. I did most of that part of the talking. He was an older gentleman, and then older to me was 40 years old because I was 19. And you know, he liked me enough where he said, "I'm going to give you a job. You're going to open my mail, you're going to answer my phone, and you're going to get my lunch." And I thought, wow, I've arrived. I'm in the music business. And you know what? I was in the music business. As everyone knows, historically, the Ritz was just an extraordinary venue for putting on shows, whether those shows were the Misfits, the Undead, Black Flag, to 5 Nights of Tina Turner, the return of Tina Turner. It was just an extraordinary place, and that's where I gained like all my chops there. You know, I also learned eventually how to speak to booking agents and how to book a room the size of the Ritz, which is like 1,500, 1,600 seats.
Because you eventually started booking the bands into the venue.
I did start booking the bands into the venue.
Which
and,
to some people could be a really intimidating thing. Anyone who's worked in
you know,
clubland, I mean, that's
it's,
like
it's a strange thing because music, there was never plan B for me. It was always music related, and I just felt comfortable getting on the phone talking to these agents about, "Oh, really? Bow Wow Wow are coming," or "Joan Jett and the Blackhearts are playing," or "Yes, we want to have Prince here for 5 nights." You know, it just felt natural to me. And that was so helpful once I exited the Ritz 3 years later and started as an A&R executive, even though I still had no idea what an A&R executive did. But I started. You
started shaping the way that people kind of like digested music, because you know an A&R guy is responsible for not only bringing in talent and signing them, but also kind of like shaping their image and going from there.
Well, I learned quickly, you know, and you know, yes, I believe A&R is the most important department in a record company, because the A&R department is signing artists, making records, developing artists, finding producers, putting budgets together, everything it takes to make a record before it hits the public.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and through your journey, you met a lot of interesting people, and you sent me some pictures that we should probably
go
through. So
it's like a trip down memory lane here.
I love it.
So, well, this is the poster. For the
that's
film.
the poster for the film, and you know,
how would you say who the
is that guy?
Well, you know, that's the poster, and you know, the film is currently on Netflix, Amazon, and iTunes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's Drew Stone directing drummer Lars Ulrich from Metallica. My all-time favorite artist of all time, and a goddess. That's the one and only
Nina Simone.
Wow.
Oh, that's pretty remarkable.
That's backstage in a trailer with Rob Zombie.
I love that. I love the smile. I love the smile.
Rob actually has one of the best little anecdotes.
Rob has a few anecdotes in the film, and it will leave you laughing.
It's just remarkable.
That's Phil Anselmo from the group Pantera. I've never actually worked with him, but we've known each other for years. He's one of my favorite frontmen in rock and roll, and
pays you a wonderful compliment.
Oh, well, he's awesome. We really love each other.
Yeah.
We really do. We love each other. Yeah. And he's great. That is May 1981 at the Ritz. My friend Pat Kepik took that photograph. It's what was going on, that was in the afternoon. What happened prior to that is I booked a sold-out show with Bow Wow Wow, and they were managed by Malcolm McLaren. And Malcolm called me a week in advance saying, we're not coming. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And, you know, the singer, Annabella, was underage. And he said, well, her mom doesn't want her to go across the pond. And I said, well, you can tell her mom that I will buy her a ticket to come here and perform. I mean, they had 2 sold-out nights. They said they weren't coming. I said, send back the deposit. I don't think they ever sent back the deposit. And I knew that John was in town with his band Public Image Limited. I had never met him before. I believe he was
So
up
you didn't know what you were getting into.
I had no idea what I was getting into. Him and his other 2 members of the band were at Liz Rosenberg's office up at Warner Brothers. They were just doing a press junket for their record, Flowers of Romance. I called them. I said, come on down, I want you to perform. They said, we don't have any music planned. I said, we'll all work it out. Well, as we all know now, it was a disaster. About 18 minutes into the performance art piece, there was a riot where chairs were getting flung off the balcony, bottles were getting flung, people were not smiling, and it was really
come out from behind
they would never. We had a huge, like $25,000 screen that we projected. We were a video club, and we projected every new video known to man there. They were behind the screen. They were projected with white lights, so it looked really kind of beautiful silhouettes. But people didn't want performance art. They wanted Johnny Rotten, and they wanted rock and roll, which they didn't get. And like I say, another story, the rest is history. It was really a shot heard around the world that night. It was on all the news stations. And the next morning, it was on the cover of Sounds and New Musical Express and Melody Maker. It was an infamous evening.
It was quite the moment.
It was quite the moment.
Well, no wonder you decided to, like, go into A&R.
Oh, I loved it. I loved the insanity. I loved the creativity. It was an awesome job.
Here's a young boy.
Oh, that's a great Polaroid of Lars Ulrich, the drummer for Metallica, and myself. That was summer of 1984 when I signed them. I think that was backstage in the UK somewhere.
Okay.
That was me and James Hetfield, the singer for Metallica. We're in Los Angeles. We might have even been at a Misfits show. I'm not sure, but it's a fun, fun picture. Present day, 2017, with James Hetfield, the singer for Metallica. He is an extraordinary human being. He's a great front man. He really is one of the best.
Yeah,
really
wonderful performer. Yeah.
I laugh because I love Doyle from the Misfits with all my heart and soul. I call him my angel. I embarrass him a little, but he calls me his angel too. So we're allowed. He's a lovely human being. He plays in one of the greatest bands known to man called the Misfits. He has his own band called Doyle, and that's backstage in their trailer.
Okay.
And man, he looks good. Oh, Cyndi Lauper. Yes, Cyndi Lauper is truly an icon. I've known Cyndi probably almost 20 years now. And at some point in time, I think it was 2009 and 2010, she asked me to A&R 2 of her records. So in 2009, we made a dance record called Bring It to the Brink. And in 2010, she wanted to make a blues album. So we did lots of research, and we made a beautiful record called Memphis Blues. It even got nominated for a Grammy for Best Contemporary Blues Album.
Yeah, I think I saw her perform that album.
Yeah,
Oh, probably, maybe at the Beacon Theater or somewhere.
Remarkable.
Well, she's always remarkable,
she's just
really
great singing.
extraordinary performer.
Yeah.
Great vocalist.
Yeah, just incredible.
That's a fun picture. It was taken backstage at Slayer. That is Orion. He plays in a band called Behemoth. And that was taken on the iPhone. I've been taking lots of pictures on the iPhone, but obviously I didn't take that one because I'm in it. It's just a very fun backstage shot.
You told Cyndi Lauper that she should always sound like herself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think any artist who has a voice and knows how to tell a strong story should always just sound like themselves. 'Cause, like I mentioned earlier in the interview, that's why I don't really listen to radio anymore. Everything is auto-tuned. Everything is all about machines. And one thing just sounds like the next. So I was always interested in people who had their own point of view, whether that was John Lydon or Tracy Chapman or Metallica. They each had their own point of view, and those were the kind of people I always wanted to work with.
Or Nina Simone.
Oh, well, Nina Simone. I mean, I could go on for the whole hour about Nina Simone, but maybe we'll talk about her before the hour is up. That's a picture I just recently took backstage at the Gramercy Theater. It's a band called Venom Inc., who I love. They're coming back to New York October 3rd, so I'm going to give them a plug. They're playing at one of my favorite venues, St. Vitus Bar in Brooklyn. Yeah, I took that also with the iPhone. I do a lot of stuff with the iPhone 7 these days. I love that everything is in a square, and I love the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable. Because did you take that one too?
I took that in the East Village of a punk rocker named Spike Polite. He's adorable, and you know, I really just love what I captured there.
Yeah.
There really is I love that smile you can see.
Yeah.
There's almost an innocence, and that's exactly what he is, a punk rocker. Two lovely ladies. That is Kristen, who is one of the co-managers of Slayer, and that is on the right, Jessica, who is one of the characters in Orange is the New Black.
Oh.
I also took that backstage at Slayer, and I was just walking up to people and taking their picture. And like I said, I've been experimenting with this application called Hipstamatic, and I wanted to do these moody black and white photographs.
Okay.
So that's what I've been doing lately. Also backstage at Slayer, I just thought her face was fascinating,
Yeah, it's
and when she
remarkable.
turned around, I saw the right side of her head, and it's all tattooed, and I just thought it was a very peaceful
yeah.
and beautiful portrait. My friend Jimmy Ferrari. It's a portrait I took in Brooklyn. I asked to see his knuckles. He did, showed them to me, and another strong portrait. He's quite the character.
So
There we go.
What's it,
Back to
you
the
know,
movie.
and that your photography sort of, you know, has always been a part of you.
Yes, you know, I always took pictures. When I was really young, I used to carry around a Kodak 110 plastic camera that I'd shove in my right pocket, and I would take pictures at the clubs. Then I graduated to a Polaroid camera because I have no patience, and I wanted everything immediately.
Of course.
Then I got a 35mm camera, and I just loved taking pictures with all formats. When I stopped working at record companies in 2004, I said, I'm going to take pictures, and I wanted to take pictures of men that I was attracted to, who were strong and tattooed and scarred. And here we are in 2017, and I have had 3 books published, and I'm kind of working on an erotic Polaroid book that I hope comes out by the end of 2018.
And still very, you know, all your art kind of still has a lot of motion and movement to it, so we can almost hear the music in your photography, you know?
Yeah, I think everything has, nothing is polished. I don't like anything that's like technically perfect. I like things that are gritty and have an atmosphere, and if I take a picture and the subject is giving something to me and I'm giving something back to the subject, then the picture generally comes out sometimes beautiful, but definitely raw and in your face.
Yeah, kind of like how you've lived your life, like really kind of like really, you know, full
On,
Yeah.
full throttle.
You know, you've had
Yes.
you've
It
had
almost killed me, but it didn't.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier, but you weren't afraid to go there in the film. And, yeah, it's your rise, your fall, and your rise again.
Well, you know, it was very easy in the music business because, you know, I was out every night seeing people. You know, you drink, you drug, and I have an addictive personality, and I became addicted to alcohol and drugs, and that was for a really long period of time. And finally, 10 years ago, I got sick and tired of myself, and I didn't want to be a no-show. I didn't want to be a liar. I didn't want to be all those negative things that were turned into the norm for me. So one Sunday, October 21st, 2007, I said, I've had enough of this, and I went to a 12-step meeting, and I stayed. That's the trick of it all, to stay one day at a time. And coming up October 21st, I'll have 10 years clean and sober. you know, back in the day, you know, I at one point I had full-blown AIDS in 1995, and I was taking my meds with vodka and beer. Not anything I recommend to anyone. You know, I don't do any of that stuff anymore where I put my body at risk. So, you know, like I said, I'm coming up on 10 years clean and sober, and because I take my meds how I'm supposed to take my meds, there is not even a trace of the virus in my body these days. And that's a blessing.
Yes.
And you still got all this music and all this art that you've still given us.
I have lots of music, lots of art, lots of energy, and I just keep moving forward the best that I can.
Now, you know, they say that video killed the radio star. Do you think the internet killed the pop star?
Well, no, the internet, I don't think killed the pop star. I mean, all those people that I kind of hinted at that are homogenized and auto-tuned are part of top 40 radio. It's just not anything that interests me at all. You know, I always wanted things on the edge and always very different, and those are the artists that I gravitated towards.
You like your music visceral.
Absolutely.
And there are so many still out there that have the raw talent to make it in the local clubs. They're just not getting the platform as
well, you know, what it's turned into is, you know, there's no such thing, or I don't think there's such a thing as artist development anymore. Either the record companies want you to sell millions immediately, or they have no interest. So young people who want to be on a label, I tell them, you know, it's like DIY, do it yourself these days. If you don't have money, you have a friend that has a camera, make the video of your best song, put it on YouTube, be out there, play live, get a mailing list going, anything that gets you out there into the public eye. And you know, if you're great, something will happen. You know, over the years, I've heard lots of very good music, but good is not great. You know, you got to be great. You got to have that charm, that charisma. You got to know how to tell a good story. And if you know how to do all of that, and you keep on keeping on, something will happen. Something really will happen.
And if you don't believe us, you have to check out the documentary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who the F is that
Who
guy?
the F is that guy?
The
Directed by
Fabulous
Drew
Journey.
Stone.
Fabulous Journey of Michael Alago. Yes.
and it's currently on Netflix.
Netflix, Amazon, and iTunes.
So
go watch it. Go watch it.
It's
quite spectacular.
the runtime's about an hour and a half, and it's a
Yeah,
very well spent hour and a half.
It's very well put together, and like I said, we talk about the early days in Brooklyn, we talk about the club years, we talk about addiction and recovery, we talk about HIV, we talk about everything, all in under 90 minutes.
It's quite joyful.
You know what? It really is an incredible story, if I may say so myself. And I'm glad that I lived. And like I said,
So are we.
I'm still living. And like I said, everyone takes something different away from the film. And I think when you tell the truth, like I've told the truth, people just believe you. And whether that's taking away, wow, this guy signed all these bands that informed my youth, or not to be afraid of who you are. And just be yourself, no matter what that means. Just be yourself, and you'll have a wonderful life.
Thank you so much
Oh,
for sharing
thank you so much
your
for
life with
having
us.
me once again.
Yes, and you are watching Talking About. I'm John Griffith.
I'm JC Alvarez.
Go definitely check out the movie. Look for a little cameo by this guy.
Oh, yes, that's right. You certainly pop up in the documentary.